Welcome to the VIP Exchange, Champions in the Chaos, with Stephen Iverson, a program for people who want to turn the chaos of business and life into positive outcomes and forward momentum. Well, welcome to VIP Exchange, Champions in the Chaos, and I want to thank our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris with the U.S. Air Force. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm honored that you are part of our lineup of leaders who have found ways to be successful through disruption and chaos. And as you and I have talked before, you've had a little experience with that, haven't you?
Just a little bit of experience, Stephen. My time serving around the world in various capacities as an Air Force officer, as an Air Force pilot. Over the course of my career, I've done 11 combat deployments, over 2,000 combat hours, over 470 combat sorties. So I've experienced just a smidgen of chaos through my world.
I would say that little by comparison to other people that I visited with, and those who are going to be viewing are thinking their little chaos by comparison is just a blip. So, Jason, one of the things that has intrigued me about you is your passion for helping leaders develop trust. And there's so many different things about systems and processes and the way we think through getting through disruption. But the one thing that to me stands out the most is the need for trust, because without it, no matter what your system is, you're probably going to fall apart. Would that be true?
I would agree 100%, Stephen. To execute our mission every single day, no matter whether that's in combat, flying airplanes with special operations, to just moving trucks and machinery around our nation, around the world to build infrastructure, it requires trust. Without trust, we can't actually deliver on our brand promise, our personal brand promise, our organizational brand promise, as well as person to person. That requires a level of trust to get things done.
Mm-hmm. So a leader who may be viewing or listening to this that just unexpectedly realize they are facing some incredible chaos within their organization and they've never had to go through it, what would be your counsel to them as they begin addressing those issues as it relates to the trust? Is there some things they need to be doing prior to that, or are there some things they could be doing immediately, or is it both?
I think it's both, Stephen. I mean, at the end of the day, we've got to always prepare for our worst case scenario. And typically in the combat of life and the combat of what we do every single day in our organizations, we need to prepare for that worst case scenario, which is involving chaos. And how do we do that? Are there things that we could do better? Are there things that we could do differently? Is there training that we could be doing? Are there processes that we could be putting into place that supports the training that then allows us to empower those people that do the mission every single day, that allows us to empower ourselves? If we, as we are doing our daily things that don't include chaos, that's where we build up the level of resiliency, the level of trust, the level of commitment and accountability, that when the fit hits the shan, so to speak, we're able to handle it, that we're able to endure that chaos. It's not in that chaos that we all of a sudden finally figure out like, oh, wait, we missed this training, we missed this process. No, in flying planes in combat, I don't go into combat and go, let's see what happens. I plan, I practice over and over and over in a world where there is no chaos, where it's a controlled environment where I can simulate chaos, so that when I get into the real chaos, to the real mess of what happens in the midst of combat, I know how to operate without really giving it a lot of excess thought, without really struggling to try to keep up with what's really happening around me.
I'm pretty sure that most business leaders like to spend more time planning on success and mapping out next steps for their innovations and their advancements, and they don't spend a lot of time thinking about, should we practice disruption? Should we practice some form of failure? And what you just recommended, of course, is a part of It's part of the military. You're going to be drilling. You're going to be looking at all these different scenarios of what could take place and how can we best respond to that. But most business folks don't do that. How do you recommend that they start building that into their strategies?
Yeah, see, and that's a great question. A lot of times people think, in some cases, for example, I spend a lot of time in special operations, and people look at us as cowboys in special operations, right? They're like, you guys just fly by the seat of your pants and you do these crazy things. Well, the reality is we don't. We're not cowboys and cowgirls. What we are highly skilled, methodical people that put a lot of things in place to support our decision making process. And part of that is we plan for the worst case scenario, right? We plan for the contingencies. We're okay with failing, not in combat, not in chaos, but we make certain that we fail as much as we can, as fast as we can, before we ever get to the mission.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things, like you said, is a lot of leaders, they are only looking and planning for success. Well, in the military, what we do is we'll take 10 options and we'll figure out how do we fail, so that we know if there's 10 different ways to fail, we know what the contingency is if we fail. Okay, great. If I do this and I fail, then how do we then come back and win? If I do this over here and I fail, how do we get back in the game and go back to taking care of the mission? So we'll do that 10, 15, 20 times, however many times it takes, so that when we get to the mission, it's not a problem. We're not focused on if we fail. We're not thinking about what if we fail. We're not thinking about the possibility of failure. We are already prepared just in case we fail. But because of that, the training, those processes, and that empowerment, success is far more likely, because I don't have to use extra brain power to think about failure. I don't have to use extra brain power to think about the what ifs. I've already gone through every single what if. Mm-hmm. And I'm good. We are set to execute the mission at hand, mm-hmm, because we've gone through that cycle. So I would encourage business leaders, as they are preparing for success, to also look at what are the contingency options for them. If this doesn't happen, then what? If this doesn't happen, then what? If this does happen, then what? If this happens, then what? And as you go through that, and we call that a rock drill, a rehearsal of contingency, a rehearsal of operations. As we go through those rehearsals of our operations, when we get to the real plan, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about failure. We just execute the mission.
I like that. Just execute the mission. So a leader has greater confidence when the real chaos happens, because they've gotten comfortable with their contingency plan. But to get comfortable, they've had to practice.
Absolutely. You take, I fly airplanes for a living as an airline pilot, and you get on the airplane on a regular basis as a business traveler traveling around the country, around the world, and you don't want to consider that pilot up there is not prepared for the contingency, that if an engine shuts down, if we have to divert because of weather, if any number of things, how are you able, as a passenger, how are you able to feel comfortable with that, Stephen? Mm-hmm. You're able to feel comfortable with that because you know that we value safety. And how do we value safety? It's the right training. We make certain that we go through these challenges and we put ourselves in these simulated situations on a regular basis, mm-hmm, so that I know if something goes wrong, what do I do? Mm-hmm. And between those two pilots, we may have never met each other before. We may have never even flown with each other before. We may have never flown to that destination, but we can execute the mission because we plan for the contingencies. If this happens, then we do this. If this happens, then we do this. And we have training for that. We have procedures and processes and checklists that supports our decisions and allows us to be able to go out there and execute that mission for you as a passenger. And for you, it's seamless.
Right. So I just mentioned a moment ago how leaders can have confidence when chaos hits. But I like what you said, the passenger. I'm your passenger. I get on the plane and I've flown enough that I'm more comfortable and I have greater confidence in the pilot because of those things that you just mentioned. In fact, I don't really give it hardly any thought anymore. I just get on and I go because consistently the leaders have delivered in tough times and in normal days. There's no there's no concern because of the trust that I have. Uh, in your role as a lieutenant colonel, trust first, as we've talked about, really is developed with training. And I'm curious, how do you develop trust with those that are in your line of command, who you're really needing to trust them to deliver? Other than training, what are some of the things that you do to build trust with them?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. So one of the jobs that I perform currently is I'm a KC-46 tanker aircraft squadron commander. So I have several people that I work with, that I'm the squadron commander, responsible for the training, responsible for various aspects of being able to get that mission done as a tanker aircraft, and the air crew and the support structure that comes along with that. Oftentimes, Stephen, what happens is someone goes into an organization and they have people that work with them, that work for them, and they expect people to trust them immediately because of a title, or they expect them to trust them because of the experience. Well, there's various aspects and levels of this trust, and more importantly, what we have to do is we have to go into an organization and we have to figure out how to connect with people, how to communicate with people, and then how to get to know them so that we build a level of connection, communication, which leads to commitment, which then leads to accountability, which then leads to trust.
Mm-hmm.
That and so you can't just walk in and expect someone to trust you just because of the title.
Right.
And so as a leader, what am I going to do to endear myself to that person, to let them know that I care? A big piece of trust is you have to show people that you care. When you do that, then they want to know a little bit more, and then they're willing to share more. And then you build this common bond, you build that level of trust. And then another aspect of that, Stephen, is we have to be willing to extend a level of trust, a fair measure of grace, and a level of trust. Because unless we're willing to do that, how can we expect someone to in turn do that to us and trust us as a leader?
Mm. Yes. So much of our corporate cultures, association executives, boards of directors, they tend to lean into that idea of, well, you have to trust us because we are in the position, we have earned the title, we're there, and they unfortunately forget that the folks that are executing the mission, as you say it, uh, they're feeling a little disconnected from the boardroom or from that corner office, and um, I'm wondering if a listener today was thinking, I feel that distance, that disconnection, and maybe I've squandered some opportunities getting to where I'm at. What could they do to restore or reestablish that trust?
I think it all depends on that level of where that person is at, right? If you're a board member, your ability to connect on a one-on-one basis is obviously different than that frontline manager, supervisor position or person, if you would. So we have to first take that into context. And so I would say if people are looking to rebuild trust, it starts with being interested in others. It starts with being able to actually have conversations and actually being willing to be a little bit more transparent, being willing to be a little bit more vulnerable as to who you are, and what your purpose in that organization is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as we know, it takes a long time to build trust, and it takes just a matter of moments or seconds to lose trust. And then it is not impossible to rebuild trust. But the question becomes is, what are you going to do, and how committed to it are you?
Mm-hmm.
What I tell folks a lot of times is you have to be the most interested person, not the most interesting person. You see, if I want to rebuild trust, or if I want to just build trust from scratch, and I want to build trust with Stephen, I need to say, hey, Stephen, tell me who you are, and get to know Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get to know Stephen and listen, hear, understand, acknowledge what you have going on, then it provides the space, it provides us the opportunity that we can build a level of commitment, a level of accountability that leads to trust.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm just working on being the most interesting person to tell you how cool I am, to tell you how great I am, and all these things, you're going to go, great, just as I expected, not to be trusted, out for
Mm-hmm.
self. And that's all that matters, right? And this is not about being best friends with the people that we work with,
Right.
because we're not going to be friends with everyone.
Right.
But if we don't ever take time, Stephen, to connect with people, to communicate with people, it's almost impossible to build that trust. And especially even more challenging to rebuild trust if we've done something to damage that trust.
That's true. Very true. I was talking to somebody just recently who made a mistake. It's as simple as that. And it was a very, um, it really wasn't a damaging kind of mistake, but it hurt some people's feelings. And they didn't respond well to the reaction. And surprisingly, they actually got a reaction. And some folks said, hey, I didn't like that. And, for what it was worth. And instead of just simply apologizing and taking responsibility for it and some accountability, their response was, well, you've interpreted my actions wrongly. And it blew up in their face. And they mentioned it to me, and I said, it probably would have gone away in less than 24 hours if you had just said, I'm sorry. And it's like, well, but it's still their interpretation. They were wrong. I didn't intend to hurt. Well, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And now they're seeing that strain in their trusting relationship they had before. And sometimes I think we just forget that we're still in the leadership role, and how we lead by example is going to make a difference in the culture. I'm curious, if you don't mind, I'm going to shift a little bit and get personal. In March of 2020, the world pretty much came to a stop. And most of us, and you and I share speaking as a part of our industry, most of us who are speakers or trainers saw everything just kind of vanish. And I'm curious, how did you handle the chaos that happened in 2020? And where are you at now? Are you seeing some things change? And what have you maybe done intentionally to get to a point where you're seeing progress?
March of 2020 was unforgettable. And I say that because I was in a position where I felt like I was riding high in every aspect of life, so to speak. And so that month I had done a couple of live speaking engagements. I was flying some airline trips around the world, and things were looking great. And I will always recall that day when I was coming back off of a trip. I can't remember what location I was coming from, but I think I was flying from out of the country, either Colombia or Mexico, and got to Dallas International Airport, and the NBA basketball season had been shut down. And I'd never seen so many sad people in my life, Stephen, right? I mean, it was like the DFW airport came to a standstill. Mm-hmm. And so that was like that moment of change, if you would. And what I tell people is the way I looked at 2020 was I was running the race full speed. I was sprinting, I got in the chalks, got in the blocks, somebody snapped the gun, and I took off running as fast and as hard as I possibly could. And as I'm running, at some point, someone came out with a shotgun, and they fired the shotgun, and they said, basically, not only reverse course, but you cannot slow down, keep running as fast as you possibly can. And we're going to put 6-foot hurdles in front of you. You never even jumped a normal size hurdle. And stop, right? Like that's how I felt about 2020 and what happened. And so chaos, that's an understatement. I had to change course because I was no longer doing airline flying because it came to a screeching halt. Mm-hmm. I had to change course because I now had to engage full time with my military work. Mm-hmm. I was in chaos because I lost some family members. I was in chaos because everything that I had planned for and expected in 2020 ceased to happen in the manner in which I had planned for it at the start of that year and leading up to that year. Mm-hmm. And so I hit a wall. At one point, I had to ask for help. At one point, there's a whole lot of other things that happened in 2020. And at one point, I had to raise my hand and say, hey, I'm going to take a knee, what we call a combat pause. Mm-hmm. And I had to get professional help and get some psychological help, get a mental therapist, to help me through that chaos, for me to understand why I was having such a challenge dealing with the reality. Mm-hmm. And so I say that very openly because I want people to know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to do what we call a combat or a tactical pause, where you take a knee, and sometimes you take 2 knees, and you pause to figure out how to get through the chaos. Yeah. The chaos didn't stop. It kept going. but I had to take that tactical pause, that combat pause, take a couple of knees and take time to get assistance, get help to understand what I could control, what I couldn't control. Well, now here we are, fast forward, and I was able to get mentally back into the game. And I feel like there was a lot of lessons that could be learned through that time. You know, it's okay to have a challenge with things that change. It's okay to have challenge and chaos. I talked about planning for chaos in combat and flying airplanes. You can't plan for the chaos that happened in March of 2020, right,
No,
Stephen?
no, nobody did.
And exactly, but and here's the thing, right? To your question, Stephen, what you have to do, I think that the difference in those who continue to succeed, those who continue to thrive, those who continue to overcome the challenges that existed in that moment, that continue to exist for some people, it's you have to be willing to keep getting up every day. You have to be willing to keep figuring out, how do I innovate? You have to be willing to figure out, okay, that didn't work. What's next? That didn't work. What's next? And not allow that chaos, that challenge to stop you in your tracks, to where after a pause, a momentary pause, you get back up and you get back into the game. Because trust me, Stephen, I thought about giving up some things that I was doing. I thought about saying, I'll just do this or just do that and not do anything else because it's too complicated. It's too hard. And I don't know how to process the next step. But as I continue to talk through that, as I continue to work through that in my head, work through that with my spouse, my significant other, not isolating myself from her, talking about it with friends that I trusted, to allow them to help me and allow us to help each other. That's what made the difference for me to stay engaged, to get more engaged, to get more involved, so that I could overcome the challenges in that chaos. Because it was some very, very challenging, dark moments, Stephen.
Oh yeah, yes. I've heard from others that I've interviewed and some of my own research that the two things that I hear you just said are coming back to me. One is taking a proactive approach. May have never done something before, but I'm going to test it and I'm going to try it. And if it works, we can validate it. Then I'm going to keep leaning into that. And if it doesn't, I'm not going to waste any more time with it, but I'm going to look for the next thing to test. And that gives us a sense of empowerment, even though we might not yet be moving or getting traction, but we're doing something. And so that's one thing, is just having that ability to go ahead and take some sort of action. The other was reaching out to other people. What I found is most organizations that have leaders that are really helping them through everything in a meaningful way, they are really tapping into a sense of, I call it organic collaboration. They're
Absolutely.
reaching out to others who are near, who have other resources, ideas, whatever, or perspectives, and they're involving them so that together they can have some success. And that's what I hear you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think life, business, combat, those are team sports, right? They're all very similar, and it's a team sport. In life, Stephen, we can choose to isolate ourselves, or we could choose to insulate ourselves, right? When you isolate yourself, then you become an island, right? And what do they say? No man is an island.
Right.
No person is an island. And so I know I saw people during the chaos of 2020, and still to this day, and I can even discuss other situations where I've seen people fail. And a majority of the reason why they failed, Stephen, was not because of the chaos, but it was because during the chaos, during the challenge, during the obstacles, they made a decision, whether conscious or unconscious, to isolate themselves. Mm-hmm. When chaos happens, it's not time to isolate yourself. It's time to insulate yourself with the right people, right? Jim Rohn talks about those 5 people that makes all the difference. Mm-hmm. In chaos, if you don't have the right team, if you haven't surrounded yourself with the right people, and this is something you do before the chaos hits.
Right.
Who are those 5 people you can call on, right? What is that group that you can reach out to? That mastermind group, whatever the case may be, certain family members, certain friends, certain business associates, that when the fit hits the shan, you can call them and go, hey, I need help.
Right.
Hey, I need somebody just to talk to. Hey, I just need to get this off of my chest, off of my mind. Can we talk? Mm-hmm. You don't exercise those muscles without building those muscles before the chaos and the combat happens.
There it is. Yeah. So back to trust. establishing the trust before everything implodes or explodes in some situations. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the time that you're giving us today and the insights. It's been very helpful. I'm gonna I'm gonna wrap it up here in just a few moments by asking you to give us some final thoughts. If you could just say something to somebody that's encouraging, thinking about the year ahead, what would it be that you would say? But before you do that, I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you, what resources or how to connect to actually maybe get you to come and speak to an organization or whatever it is. How would you recommend people make that connection?
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Stephen. You can reach my website at nofailtrust.com, www.nofailtrust.com. You can find my email, all my contact information there, or if you want to get me directly, you can call me or text me at 719-203-7257. Once again, that's 719-203-7257. I'm pretty responsive on that. And then, of course, I love to eat donuts. So if you got a great donut recommendation, text me that too, because I love to eat donuts with my daughter. That's how I build trust with my daughter on Fridays is we have daddy-daughter donut dates. So I would love to hear from folks. And if they want to get a copy of some of my content, they're more than welcome to reach out. And I'd love to share some of that content with them, Stephen.
That's awesome. I love that. Fridays, daddy-daughter donut day.
Yes,
I
sir.
love that. Now, just out of curiosity, do you ever practice a little chaos with her and maybe do a test run of no donuts available? And what's your
Oh,
contingency plan for that?
we always have those kind of conversations. And I stress to her, I says, honey, what's worth crying about and what's not? And let's talk about what are you going to do to fix the situation? And what are you going to do to plan differently next time? So we have these conversations all the time because she's 6 right now. When she's 16, Stephen,
Uh-huh.
that's when the chaos will happen for
Oh
real.
yeah,
And if
that's
I
true.
don't plan with her now, starting at 6, right? When
That's
she's
right.
16, I'm not going to be able to expect and empower and trust her to
Hmm.
make the right decision.
That's right. That's right. So start with donuts.
There you go.
Yeah, that's very good. Well, as we wrap it up, if someone's watching or listening today and they're just kind of on the edge thinking the next few months or the next year, just I'm not sure what to do, what would be your advice for them?
Stephen, what I would say to people is first off is a lot of times when we look at things, we look at challenges and obstacles, we go in there with an imposter syndrome. And that imposter syndrome is we think we're not good enough, we think we're not worthy, we think we don't belong, any number of other thoughts that are in line with that. And the reality is that the imposter doesn't have those thoughts because they know that they are an imposter. I would encourage you to know that you are the right person, that you are ready for that obstacle, you are ready for that challenge. And as such, lean on the training that you've had, lean on the processes that you have that you created for yourself, as well as within your organization. And if you need more training, get more training, but know that you are the right person. And it starts with trusting yourself to be able to engage in the combat of life and to be able to overcome any obstacle that's put in front of you. And that requires you to trust yourself first and foremost.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Jason Harris, Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris, thank you so much for visiting with me on VIP Exchange Champions in the Chaos.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Absolutely humbled, Stephen.
Thank you.